Welcome to the Whitetail Legacy Podcast.
And we get the back view of him, and I mean, it's just a mega.
52 yards is a long shot. Magnum PI, what we named him. No idea.
Just a magnum.
Yeah, just a magnum.
Come on cam last year, we said probably 150, mid 150.
Yeah.
Same doe from the morning come out with that 9-pointer.
Here steps out this 90-inch 8-pointer. You're like,
I'm like, okay, well, there's still a buck back there grunting.
Yeah.
And then out steps like another 90-inch 8-pointer. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
Bro.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm like, deer, right there.
Yeah, like
and he's already
yards.
30 yards.
Yeah.
He was literally 5 yards from the base of the tree. Could have been, had a buck down at 1:40 in the afternoon, back there deep on public. 3 does come out pretty early. It was like 245, 24-yard shot, sent the combat veteran, and I tell you what, man, dude, it just smoked. We always get so jacked up when the other person kills. It's just almost like we got it done.
Yeah. And when you killed that doe, I was like, hell yeah, man.
And we come down here to Missouri.
I asked Comey one more time. I'm like, is it a good buck? And he goes, yeah, real good, solid buck. I'm like, all right, boom. And the deer just drops. Sure. Super special to me.
Whitetail Legacy Podcast, bringing you back to the hunt and leaving a legacy. Baller Rut.
This is the Whitetail Legacy Podcast coming in your ear holes, and we're going to sound extra crispy right now because we got the bush apple.
Ooh.
Finally, long wait. This shit's like gold. It's hard to find this stuff.
I'm going to say, I'm about to find it. I can't get rid of the corn can just yet.
He's starting off slow. I went straight for the,
I should say,
straight for the tree. Can. Yeah. All right. We're going to get into the show here. We have Michael Reed on. This is a guy. It's funny, like you watch him on TV, but you might not ever catch the name. He's been with Midwest Whitetail for a long time, kills giants, and he's going to come on the legend here and talk about the buck he called Prodigy. If you have not watched this video, it's one of the most epic whitetail hunts I've ever watched.
It's up there for sure.
I've never seen a dude backstroke in a whitetail. That's all I'm leaving. He'll get into the story. It's an awesome podcast, guys. We're going to get into the people that make this possible, and we're going to get into the show. We're going to start out with the VIP broadhead. The VIP veteran is still $35, guys. You can get into that if you've been wanting to try the veteran 2-blade, cut on contact, variable cutting with broadhead, $35, and you can get your pack to your door. That's a great price for a pack of broadheads these days. All American made product. You got the VIP shout out?
Yeah, this week's shout out is a two-parter. This is part one. This week is going to be Tyson Trunkhill. He has 21 years of service, and he's always used archery as a form of therapy and release from his symptoms of PTSD. So we'll continue on with his shout-out next week. But for this week right now, I just wanted his personal shout-out. And Tyson, we appreciate your service. And as we will find out more next week, appreciate everything you're doing for fellow veterans.
All right, it was ECW calls, all your custom call needs right here in Roseville, Illinois. Check them out if you need grunt tube duck calls. J.K. Williams whiskey barrel calls coming at you now.
And this week for Exodus. Exodus has started their annual campaign of Velvet Fest. It's something that we really love the last few years. If you're not familiar with it, it is basically the official start to the deer season. And, Exodus is just helping everybody make sure that their cameras are out there taking pics and just getting you more jacked up for season than you probably already are. I know when Velvet Fest comes around, man, that just means season's getting closer and closer. Also, Velvet Fest is a great time to pick up a new camera from them. Here's the deal. Every single camera order comes with a random prize card that you'll have to scratch off to reveal the prize. I've been told they've got some big deals going on, so you're not going to want to miss out. And then they're going to sweeten the pot even more for you guys. Each week they're going to have a special offer along with a grand prize. And just as a teaser, here's the grand prize for each week of the Velvet Fest celebration. Week 1, they got a 2021 October archery hunt with Steve Shirt Guide Service. Week 2, they have a shorter mount from Urine Taxidermy. In Week 3, they got a September archery hunt. This season with Wicked Obsession in Kentucky and a shoulder mount from the national award-winning studio Full Draw Taxidermy. So some pretty big prizes right there. For any orders on the website during the designated week, you'll be automatically entered with any purchase on the website for the grand prize. So there's a lot to do in this campaign, so you just want to head over to ExodusOutdoorGear.com and make sure that you're on their newsletter because you won't want to miss out on any of those opportunities. If you're not familiar with Exodus, just give you some cliff notes about their company. Over the last 5 years, Exodus has consistently shown that they build quality trail cameras that flat out work and, of course, the best trail camera warranty period that we love. Every single camera is backed with a 5-year warranty that comes with theft and damage coverage. 5 years. That's literally half a decade. So the Exodus 5-year warranty, but you're most likely not going to need it because your camera's already built to last. So be sure to get them pics and use the hashtag VelvetFest. That's with a capital V and a capital F. And be sure to get in there and get a camera picked up.
All right, you got Next Level Dealer of the Week.
Yeah, this week's dealer for Next Level is going to be Andrew Denbo out of Ozark, Missouri, which would be in the southwest part of the state. Andrew owns his own lawn and landscape business, and he also does food plots for fellow hunters. So you can reach Andrew at 417-818-4748, and that'd be Andrew Denbo in the Ozark, Missouri area.
Nice. Yep, that's kind of where I grew up, just north there. So, all right, let's get into Ingram's Outdoor Obsession, all your taxidermy needs. Ingram came out. He's going to spray the food plot for us. Just huge shout out to him for being a solid taxidermist and just a good friend, man. He helps us out a bunch, and
Yeah.
I can't wait to return the favor. He's been mountain buck so much he hasn't even been able to go put cams or stands or anything out.
Oh,
so,
wow.
All right, let's get in the show. All right, we got Mike Reed from Midwest Whitetail on. How you doing tonight, man?
Doing great. Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. That's pretty awesome. I didn't know we were so close, man. We could have maybe did a in-person one sometime, but we really appreciate you coming on. We're going to talk about a buck that you killed named Prodigy, who is just, the film is absolutely epic. One of the coolest whitetail films I think I've ever seen, and we're not going to ruin it right here at the beginning, but just let the listeners know a little bit more about you and what you do for a living and where you're at right now.
Yeah, so I live in eastern Iowa in the Iowa City area. I've been here for about 12 years now. I grew up in South Louisiana. Started hunting about age 10. Learned everything from my grandfather. Hunted public land for, over a decade and learned some woodmanship and all that. Got ate with the bow hunting bug and moved up to Iowa for work, really. I'm a head and neck surgeon. I actually did my residency training at the University of Iowa. And my wife and I just fell in love with Iowa and ended up staying up here, which works out pretty well for a deer hunter. And I bought my first farm up here about 6 years ago, and I've just kind of gotten into all the management and trying to grow the biggest bucks we can, and spent a lot of time in the tree during bow season.
Yeah, I remember an episode where I think it was like your first hunt on a farm you just had bought or something, and you passed like a mid-160s. You're like, we're gonna let this one pass. I'm like, man, the first hunt in, it was like some like a swampy CRP kind of area.
Yeah, that's happened maybe more than once even. It seems kind of crazy to look back, but I didn't start out that way, obviously. I mean, I grew up hunting public hardcore. I mean, if it was brown, it was down, and like slowly but surely, my hunting, goals changed. And I mean, I'll never forget when I first started kind of targeting, 5-year-olds, and that was on a farm I hunted back in Louisiana. That was under a good management plan, and when you start seeing what they can become over time, it becomes more interesting, especially once you get a few good bucks on your belt. You want to get some bigger ones. And people often say, I can't believe you passed that. It's like, well, I've killed a couple of them, and it's not for everybody, but I'm ready to try to get the next one. And, obviously we have some limited tags here in Iowa. It's not like it's a free-for-all, so you got to be a little bit selective. And I spend a lot of time in a tree, so I try to get the biggest ones I can.
Yeah, I feel like everybody starts off, that transition where they just want to kill everything, and then if you fall in love with hunting and you hunt so much, when you get past that, man, I can't kill a 6-pointer because then done buck hunting. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you done burn
Right.
yourself and a bigger deer comes out in November and you're tagged out in October, and you just keep putting the time in, and eventually you get to the stage we're at, you know what I mean, where we're trying to kill nice deer, and then you shoot a bunch of nice deer, and then you get the stage you're at where you just want to kill absolute giants. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's
just
just a
keeps
transition of
Mhm.
you put more time in, you get older, you get a little older. It's almost not about I have to kill. It's more like I want to kill something that I want to kill this. It's, if I kill, cool, but I want to kill this. You know what I mean? So I think that goes
or
with
even
everybody.
a particular buck. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Spending a whole year just chasing one particular deer or two particular deer. You know, now my oldest daughter, I've got 5 little kids, 3 girls and then twin boys, and they're all between the ages of 2 and 8 right now. But my daughter, she, oddly enough, her first deer was like a 160-inch deer, the 6.5-year-old that I had 3 years of history with, you know. And I'm like, I probably ruined her, but you know, I've always told her when we go out there, we can shoot whatever. You know, you just want to instill that interest in hunting and make it fun. So, yeah, I'm definitely it's a natural progression. I mean, you want to get people out there hunting and have interest, but eventually I think we all kind of end up here where maybe hunting particular bucks.
Yeah, my wife wanted to get into hunting something fierce, and I was on one of her grandpa's farms. I no longer hunt any of those, but I kept passing this 8-pointer. I'm like, man, this deer's got to come back out when she's out here. And then she shot it. It's right at a 138, and then she's just like, I'm good with that. She's went shotgun hunting a couple of times, but she won't shoot does. She's just waiting for a giant, you know what I mean? But she don't want to put the time in to kill a giant. She just wants to go out there and get lucky again now. So I did ruin her. It's like, I killed one nice one, I'm done. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
That's funny.
All right, well, let's get into this story a little bit. You can start off wherever you want. Like I said, for our listeners, if you have not seen this episode of Midwest Whitetail, I mean, any episode of Midwest Whitetail, but especially this one's so awesome. So go ahead and dive into the story of Prodigy.
Yeah, sounds good. So this particular farm, it's a river bottom farm in Iowa, and bought it in 2017. We closed on it in November. And so we had a good year that year. In fact, we referenced some of our encounters that year in the video for Prodigy. And I was chasing a buck called Merino. We had actually encountered him that year. Thought he was a 4-year-old, and we were being really selective that year, any deer that we thought might be 4, we were passing them and trying to just grow the biggest deer we could. And then 2018, the farm went underwater for multiple months. And I never even hunted out there. And so then 19 rolls around, and it's like my first full year on the farm. And we ran cameras in 18, and we ran them pretty hard in 17. So there was a few bucks that had made it through. And one of the bucks in 18, despite the flood, late season, was this deer that looked like a 3.5-year-old and just had, I mean, basically a basket rack, but lots of points. And that's this deer we called Prodigy. That's how he got the name. We're like, man, what a buck. And pretty sure he was 3.5, and he showed up in the summer of 19, and he had blew up. I mean, I think he added, 40 inches. And basically, we started going back and forth, me and my buddy I own it with, about whether or not we should shoot him. And both of us like to target 5.5-year-old bucks or older. So if we were in a bubble and we could pick when we shoot deer, we would not shoot any of them until they hit 5.5. Obviously, we're not in a bubble, and this farm's about 200 acres, and it's not like we're in a big co-op. And so we kind of just crossed our fingers, like, well, let's not target him. Let's see what happens. Who knows where he's going to end up? He might not even be on our farm. He's just here in the summer, like, just not knowing what would happen. We kind of started the year thinking we wouldn't necessarily target him, which he disappeared. I mean, we're getting pictures of him pretty infrequently. And then I was hunting the farm. I actually shot a great buck October 26th, hunted like a low 170s, 172, 173 buck with my bow on that farm. And so my year basically last year was already awesome after that hunt. And Jared went in there, my buddy Jared Mills that owns it with me, and killed a good buck a couple days later. And I said, well, I got another tag. Let me get back in there and hunt this buck we called Merino that we had 3 years of history with. And lo and behold, Prodigy showed up, and he was just all over the farm on cameras, running all around. November 2nd, I went in there and made a hunt, kind of a surveillance hunt, did a hanging hunt, hung a set off in the wetland where I could see a lot of the farm. And this deer comes out, Prodigy, and ends up coming all the way into 30, 35 yards, tearing up a tree. Crazy encounter. And in my head, I'm like, well, he's a 4-year-old, and I'm not going to shoot him. And, then he keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger as he gets closer and closer and closer. I'm like, this is a 200-inch deer. And I'm sitting there with the bow in my hand, and I'm just, not in my hand, a bow on the hanger, and the Sony in my hand, just filming him. And ultimately decided to pass that deer that evening, and kind of came home and talked to my co-owner, my buddy, and kind of circled back around on what we should do with him. And it's hard to pass a deer like that, even for someone who does try to shoot mature deer or 5-plus-year-old deer. I ended up calling multiple neighbors, a lot of those guys, see if they'd be interested in passing him, and seeing what we look like the next year. Because if he's 200 at a 4-year-old, could he be one of those deer that's 250 at 5? And everybody was like, dude, you're crazy. None of us, we're all hunting him. We're not passing him. And so at that point I said, well, if I get another chance with the bow, I'm going to take it. I was still in there hunting Merino's 6.5-year-old deer that we had 3 years of history with, but knowing that, there's a possibility this deer would come in if I was out there. And sure enough, November 5th, beautiful day, cold. It was like 28 degrees that morning, northwest wind, high pressure, clear blue skies. Started off, the morning was kind of slow, and then he ended up coming in, later in the morning. That hunt was complicated by a coyote coming in about 9 o'clock. I think we talked a little bit about this through messaging earlier, but this coyote's rolling out of the timber, and this farm is full of coyotes. And so I thought, well, I wasn't seeing much deer. I'd seen a fawn, a doe, and maybe a small buck, and so I'm going to try to shoot this coyote. And I just squeak at him with my mouth, and he comes in, and I shoot him. And I didn't hit him well. He kind of wheeled into the arrow when I shot, and I wasn't quite sure where I shot him, but I didn't get a pass through. The arrow was just hanging out, and he ran back into what we call the peninsula. And I was just I was reviewing the footage and talking with my camera guy, like, where did I hit this thing and what happened? And the next thing we know, we hear a bunch of grunting, and I look over, and here comes Prodigy with another small buck and chasing a doe. And it all happens really, really fast, but he runs into 15 yards. And this particular tree, the previous landowner had, he was a traditional archery hunter. And so he had to stand in that tree like at 12 feet. And that doesn't work real well. It's an old cottonwood. There's no branches on it. And so with another camera guy and like into November with minimal leaf cover, we need to get higher so we don't get picked off. So that morning I actually climbed into the old stand, and then I put 4 more sticks and a pair of stands. So I was about 35 feet off the ground, which I don't normally try to get that high, but in the dark, hanging out in the dark, I don't quite realize how high I am. Anyway, we ended up being way up there, and at 15 yards, anybody that's been bow hunting and had a deer kind of come under them that close, that's a really steep angle. And I've had big bucks before that I end up hitting in the shoulder blade because of that. So, I aim a little bit back to make sure I don't hit the shoulder blade, and I hit him where I was aiming, which was basically back to the lungs. Got a nice mule kick, and he runs off, chasing this doe, still grunting. He didn't even know what happened. And review the footage. I ended up getting down, checking the arrow, got bright red blood immediately, bubbles in it, so I know it's a lung hit. And we're pretty confident. So we call the troops, and everybody comes over, and we review the footage. We all agree we're good to go. It's been about 3 hours. And we pick up the trail. Well, as we're trailing this buck, he's bleeding great out of both sides. High spray up on trees. I mean, I'm like, this deer's not going to be far at all. We're all just super confident as we're going down the blood trail. And then we end up, it's a wetland, so there's canary grass and sand, and it's a pretty difficult area or type of terrain to follow a blood trail in. And at some point, we got 4 guys kind of looking, and someone says, I got blood over here. And so we just jump to that blood and we keep going. Well, we unintentionally got on the coyote blood trail. And the blood trail was fizzling out, and I was like, man, this is weird. How did this happen? That blood trail was so solid. And eventually I find the broken arrow that had stuck in the coyote. So I realized, oh, man, we're on the coyote trail. So we backtracked till I knew that it was good lung blood, and ended up finding where they diverged. There's a bunch of driftwood from the previous year where it had flooded. There were all these trees that were just stuck in our timber. And Prodigy had jumped through all these down trees. And so we climbed over all that stuff and got back on his trail. And we trail him all the way across the peninsula back to the river, and we find a big bed with frothy lung blood in it and no deer. And I keep following the blood trail, and we're all just I'm slowly getting more and more nervous as I watch the blood trail just go right into the river. And it's not a small river. It's a pretty good-sized river, and it's relatively high and got a good current on it at this time of year. So immediately I'm concerned. I mean, I've lost deer in rivers and bodies of water before, growing up hunting in the swamps of Louisiana where you lose the blood trail. And I was pretty nervous about what might have happened. You know, a double lung deer, did he make it across? Like, not sure. So I'm hoping that when he got in the river, he immediately regrets his decision and he swims back to the bank. So we actually go walk down our side of the river a little bit and get down on the sandbar, and we immediately find blood. And this is a little bit hard to interpret in the video. And so we're looking there, and there's coyote tracks all up and down the bank, and there's no deer tracks at all. And what I concluded, and we don't really dive into the explanation in the video, but I think this coyote goes into our peninsula, and then as he's coming back out of the peninsula, he stumbles across the coyote that I shot. He stumbles across Prodigy, near death. I don't think that double lung deer lived for super long. And but I had shot that coyote probably 15 minutes before I shot the deer. And I think that's what got the deer up out of his bed, and he was able to crash into the river. And then the coyote jumps down on the sandbar and kind of watches the deer float away is how I envision it happening. But none of that's in the video. But this sandbar is covered in blood and coyote tracks and no hoof prints. So obviously Prodigy didn't walk back out of the river and then go back into the river. So the coyote that I shot was right there where I had ended up, his deer bed was. So moving on, we call the neighbor who owns the ground across the river. I get permission to go check, and we drive around. It's about a 15-minute drive to the nearest bridge, and we get all the way around there, and we just are scouring the bank and find no sign. So my assumption at this point is he didn't make it across. He died somewhere in his effort to swim across, and he's floated downstream. And so we're getting pretty bummed. We're about 6 hours into the recovery at this point, and I'm thinking, he just sank and he's gone. And so I'm just walking down the river, and I'm glassing some of the driftwood or log jams that are on the sides of the river from trees that were eroded and fell in. And I can see something across the river in the far bank that looks like maybe a piece of a deer sticking up out of the water. And in the binos, it looks that way. He's in a pile of logs, but it looks like a deer. We actually had a drone with us, so we get the drone out, fly it over there, and you can clearly see it's a deer. It's just a butt end of the deer, and the head is submerged under this log jam. And so, what's the chances it's some doe or small buck? But we're going back and forth. It's like it's got to be the deer that I shot. And he's got just enough air in his body cavity that he's staying afloat. And so me and the guys talk it over. We don't have a boat. We got a canoe all the way back on our place that we could go back around and get, but it's getting dark. If this is this 200 deer that I shot that I finally found, I don't want him to sink. I don't have the number to the neighbor that he's stuck up against the opposite bank of where we're standing now. So he's back on our side, but it's the next neighbor down. I don't have the number. Can't get in touch with him. And just after some discussion, I said, you know what, I'm going to swim over there, and I'm going to check and see what deer this is, make sure it's him, and then I'll just tie him up to the trees, and then we can make sure he's not going to sink, come back, get warmed up, go get a boat, do whatever we got to do. And so I just stripped down. It's about 40 degrees at this time. It was 27 degrees. that morning with frost on the ground and everything, and it had warmed up. The high was about 42, so pretty chilly water. And I swim across the river and climb up on the down tree there, walk over, grab him by the legs. Another thing you don't see in the video is how difficult it is for me alone to lift this 240-pound deer out of this water. He's waterlogged. He's full of water.
You look like a stud. You look like you just grab it and pull it right out.
I know. Everyone that has ever watched it says, dude, what the heck? You just like swim over there. You just grab, lift him up and swim back.
I was jacked. That's
not what happened.
I was flowing.
The power of editing.
They did a good job making me look good, but that's not what happened exactly. I mean, that current's got him submerged under the head. It's actually the root ball of a big shagbark hickory that had tumbled into the river. And so, man, I'm yanking on him. I'm just expending all my energy and getting pretty worn out. I had swam over there with 40 feet of like a black tow rope kind of thing. And so I ended up just using a little physics. I pull up on his leg, his rack pops up out of the water. It's one of the coolest shots I love that shot on video. It looks so cool. His rack just kind of popping up out of the water. I'm able to make a little lasso, hook it around his antlers, and then I tie part of the rope around the root ball, and I'm kind of making a pulley till I can get him up high enough to grab his front legs. And eventually I get him up onto the tree, and I'm sitting there thinking, all right, he's here, he's safe, he's not going to go away, we can do whatever. Sun's going down. I'm talking back and forth with the guys, and say, you know what? I think if I push him in right here, I've got 40 feet of rope to work with. I can swim to the end of this rope, and then I'll just tow him back across. And ultimately, probably not the smartest thing. Definitely wouldn't encourage anyone to do that. But I'm like, I was a lifeguard, in college. I was like, I'm a strong swimmer. I can do this, I forgot about my dad bod, but anyway, I get him in the water and get him back across. And right when I'm fatiguing pretty well, I can reach my feet down and feel the sandbar. And one of the guys walked out and grabbed my hand, and we tow him up. And man, what a sense of relief to get that deer back on our side of the river and have him recovered.
Yeah, when you guys pull him up on the land, that shot where you guys are pulling him up, and the rack actually is on land. That's one of the coolest shots, I think. But yeah, that drone shot of when you're pulling on him and then his rack finally comes up. I couldn't imagine the feeling of like, oh my God, it is the deer that I shot. You know what I mean? Because I would be like, this is just some random deer that died. You know what I mean? It's floated up in here. But when that rack pops up and that drone catches it, that's a pretty epic shot. But yeah, when you're on the other side of the river, and they got the full rope linked, and the buck's like drifting away, and you're swimming.
Right.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This guy is not holding back.
It was like pure euphoria. I mean, it was just, there's lots of, all of us deer hunters know there's lots of ups and downs when you're going on a difficult blood trail. And you go from the highest to highest, the lowest to lows. And I mean, at one point I thought, this deer that a large part of me didn't want to shoot just because he was a 4-year-old. No matter how big he is, and I'm just an obsessive bow hunter. Like, part of me didn't want to shoot him, but it's just crazy. It's crazy to keep passing that opportunity in this environment. Anyway, you can go on and on about that and the pros and cons of that. But, imagine how I felt emotionally when I was like, I wasn't going to shoot him. I passed him. I decided to shoot him, and then I'm going to lose him. I'm going to kill this deer and never recover him. And once he went to the river, I'm like, this is exactly what's going to happen. Like, the deer gods are punishing me.
Should have passed this deer.
Find him, and I'm like, just like pure euphoria.
I was going to say, in the video, you could just kind of tell by your body language, you're like, this is a joke, right? Like this is a joke.
Oh, man. Yeah, like, you can't make this stuff up. And I think I said in the video, it's like, if we weren't filming this, no one would believe it.
Yeah, it's just, when you're on that sandbar and the guy's like, there's no deer tracks here, when they're where the blood, and you're like, yeah, it's all coyote tracks. I'm like, the coyote came back around? This is insane.
I kind of wish we would have dived into that. We got a lot of questions about that. So I'm like, what makes sense here? I was like, that coyote freaking jumped this deer out of his bed. I mean, how long does a double-lung deer live? I mean, I gutted this deer on the sandbar. Big hole through the lungs. I mean, I've got pictures and everything. I mean, it's very hard to believe that deer lived, more than an hour at most, and probably not that long.
How far was that bed from where you shot him total?
400 yards.
400 yards.
400 yards. And I kind of like, when we were going, we all thought, based on the video and the blood trail, and I've been on over 100 blood trails. I've seen a lot of them, but based on the blood trail and what we knew where the shot was and how the arrow looked, all of us were, he's going to be dead in 100 yards. We were just certain of that. And then as we weren't finding him, I thought, well, he's chasing that doe. He's all revved up, high testosterone. He's still grunting, running off with a hole through his body. Maybe that helped him get a little farther. But, anytime you find a bed and the deer's not in it, that's a terrible sign. And I keep just going back, like, what is going on? And there's, like, literally frothy, just piles of foam blood in that
just
bed,
air bubble, air bubble
and
foam in there.
You're like, this is so weird. What would make him get up? And it's, we contemplated, was it us on the trail? Did we bump him up out of the bed? Well, we picked up the trail 3 hours after I shot him. There's just no way. I just don't think there's any way that we bumped him. And so what else makes a near dead deer get up out of a bed and jump in a river? And then I find all that coyote sign right there, and confirmed by the blood in the tracks, this coyote that I had wounded. I'm like, that's got to be what pushed him into the river. And then I range it with my rangefinder, and he floated about 750, 800 yards downriver before he got caught in that log jam. So he went a ways downriver.
Wow.
That's almost half a mile or so.
Yeah, and he was on the same side, so more than likely he was so close
Didn't
to
make
death,
it far.
he just got out there, got 10 foot into the water. And you could even see when he was going down that hill from the video, the tracks, you can tell that he's barely standing. He's like sliding and
right. He's hurt. He's hurt bad.
He's hurt, so that makes sense. He got out there 10 foot and then just probably flopped over and laid there for a while, and then the current finally just took him down. So luckily,
luckily he had air in his abdominal cavity, and it hadn't punctured any hole in his abdominal cavity. That air in his abdominal cavity is the only thing that kept him up. Because his lungs, big holes through both sides, just took on water, and you got to think he drowned. Like, if he was already almost dead, he couldn't breathe very long. And what this river, it's downstream of where he got in. It's a big hairpin turn. It's just a big hairpin, and so the fast current is on our side of the river. So when he got in, he was in the fast current. There's no way. It just took him down, and he just stayed along that outer bank.
Yeah.
He would have had to have been really strong to make it across, because it's probably 100 yards across.
Yeah, it's far. You can tell when you're swimming. You're like, damn, that's a pretty good sized river. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And where he went in, it's steep banks on both sides, and about that far across. Where I swam across, the sandbar shortens it down to maybe, 75 yards or so, because the sandbar goes out there a little ways. But where he went in, the opposite side is like a straight up 10-foot cliff.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, if he got out on that sandbar. And obviously there were no sign over there, so I ended up figuring it out. But that's the craziest hunt. It's not so much the hunt. It's an awesome deer. It's a really short hunt. It's the recovery that sort of makes the video and makes the story. It's just like the craziest recovery I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, it's a giant buck, and awesome that you passed him and then decided to shoot him and you got the second encounter. But then the recovery, tracking the coyote. I've done something similar to that, but I tracked the blood trail. So I'm hunting public. I just shot a really solid 9-pointer, and I do the thing where, smoked him. I leave, go back to the truck. There's a guy there. I said, hey, I just killed a buck. And, of course, he's like, yeah, I'll come help you, being a good dude. And we get on this blood trail, and I had seen two guys carrying a doe out like Indians on a stick. They just tied the feet on a stick, and I got on the blood trail of that doe dripping from them carrying it out on the stick, and then I'm tracking, and I find a giant gut pile. And I'm like, someone's done gutted my deer and rolled out of here, you know what I mean?
Man.
And then the guy got to talk, we got to talking like, what the heck, is going on? And he's like, oh, I'll bet you that's because it was weird to me that the deer circled back from where he came from after I shot him, you know.
Yeah.
And we ended up just leaving that night, and I came back, but it was like midnight, and we're at the freaking gut pile. I'm like, I'm done. I'm like, there's no way this deer went this far, for one. And then for two, I'm like, and it was the weirdest blood trail either. There was like human footprints on it and stuff. You know what I mean? You're like, but yeah, I've been there. So when you're tracking the coyote, I'm like, oh man. Then luckily you found that arrow, because if you wouldn't have found that arrow, I mean, because I think as a camera guy's like, there's your arrow, and then he's like, but your whole arrow was back there.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, there's your arrow. And I was like, no, we had a pass.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, at this point on this blood trail, I forgot I shot a coyote. I mean, I'm not thinking about this coyote at all, right?
You're like, I just
and
killed
then
a giant.
It just hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, it's the coyote arrow. And we all do,
oh man.
Yeah. Oh, dude. I mean, we were talking. I was like, something's not right. You know, it's like it's dark blood instead of that bright red blood we had. It's just spotty. And I mean, I think eventually I would have said, we got to go backtrack. There's something going on. I mean, there was just something wasn't adding up, you know. And then, but yeah, the arrow helped us sort of realize that a little bit quicker. And but we were probably on the coyote trail for 100 yards. I mean, you know, and this peninsula is. The peninsula is probably 80 to 100 acres. I mean, it's a big, long peninsula that the river, just another big hairpin curve in the river. So the coyote goes way in there. I mean, you know, who knows how far before he turns around and comes back on the opposite bank where the deer had bedded. Because the deer basically crossed the neck of the peninsula and you know, and had bedded down like right on the edge of the river, and that coyote just had gone into the peninsula and was coming back out on the opposite bank and stumbled across him. But
yeah,
crazy.
I've let a deer sit for 5 hours and it's been half ate by coyotes before.
Yeah,
so it don't take long for them coyotes to. It's unbelievable that you would think, oh, you know, it's one of those shots where it's hard quartering away and you tucked it up in there, but didn't mule kick, you know what I mean? And then you start thinking, man, maybe I was a little further back. Maybe it wasn't as steep as angle as I thought, you know, and I didn't get a pass through. And then you're starting to all these, and you're like, I'm just going to let them set for a while. And then go in there, and, you know, half of it's gone. But it don't take them long to find those deer that are close to death, I don't think. And
it's true. I mean, I've had them, you know, it took me 24 hours to recover them, and no coyotes found them. And then I've had them. There was a hunt I'll never forget. I was hunting public land in Kansas. It's probably about just 2008 or 2009, and I'm in northeast Kansas. Had some big bucks in one of those walk-in hunting areas, and I'd hunted out there for a week, seen some great deer, shoot a buck, and I'm all pumped up. It's the middle of the day. I shot this deer at 11 a.m., 11:30. Walk back to the truck with my stand and my bow, and I get my deer cart and all my equipment to get him back out of there. And I walk back in. It's been about an hour, and I pick up the blood trail, and the deer is dead, not far in there, and he's nearly completely eaten that fast in the middle of the day. So that's like an extreme example, you know. And it's just crazy sometimes. I think if they're just passing by, obviously they got good noses on them, and
yeah, you get 3-4 coyotes on there. I think they could.
They eat it so fast.
Munch down pretty much. But homie, the buck you shot on the buck nest, that was about 10 hours, wasn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it wasn't touched at all.
No.
So it just goes to show you just the luck of the draw, whether a coyote runs past there or not. And then it goes back, you know, if that was a heavy coyoted area, you know, like you said.
That's the problem. Yeah.
And that's what happened to me. You know, homie hunted out there with me, and there's just every night at sunset you can hear them ripping, and then there's a pig confinement close to there, and they throw out all the baby pigs, you know what I mean? So they're getting fed, so they just the population just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was the problem there. But like on your place, I mean, we've killed one coyote down there in turkey season, but 10 hours, and that deer wasn't scathed, and like I said, it died real quick.
I was saying,
too.
we smelled him about 80 yards away too.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Our farm, we definitely need to do some predator management. I mean, It's about an hour from where I live, so it's hard to run traps and things like that. But we've gone out there a few times coyote hunting. We killed a couple, but it's hard to kill them like that. I mean, you really need to be able to trap them.
Yeah,
we
get a hold
were
of
seeing coyotes. God, for every hunt last year, I was seeing a coyote. It just that's a lot of coyotes. You're seeing them that often.
Yeah, get a hold of Casey from the Management Advantage. Dude would wipe them out.
I've followed him, so
Yeah.
it's amazing.
He
I
just-
should. If he's for hire, I could definitely.
Yeah, he does for hire. I think we got his personal Snapchat, and man, it's just insane. He goes down there, Oklahoma and Texas, just
I've seen him in Texas running
Cleans
trap
house,
lines,
yeah.
just cleaning up, and
Yeah,
I've
so-
learned from him on his on their series, and
Yeah.
so I'm trying to figure out if I can replicate it. But that's what I should do is just pay the guy.
yeah, yeah. I'm always like, I'm gonna do it, and then I'm like, that's a hard time to trap because you need to trap like the good time is you're still trying to get it done on a deer. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like that
right.
late season grind, and you should be out there trapping coyotes after the ground freezes. And we're a 2-buck state here, so I'm
We're
lucky if I
never
got
done.
one killed, and I'd never have 2 killed by then. You know what I mean? So
Right.
my problem is if I kill a decent one, then I just after an absolute giant, and I can't kill them every year like you do. So I gotta learn. That's why I'm having you on here. It's like I learned some stuff. So we wrote down a couple notes we want to talk about. You want to hit the first one, homie?
Yeah, Mike. So with a lot of these bucks that we cover in the Legend series, a lot of these hunters have multiple encounters with these deer. Obviously, you had one within bow range, and at that point, you were still passing this deer. And I just wonder, do you think that this deer really just liked your piece of property, or was it because of the lack of hunting pressure from the year before, or do you believe that it was just like the core center of his core area?
Yeah, I don't. He definitely did the summer on us. We had a little bit of intel from the year before. Even though it had flooded when the waters did recede, he spent a lot of the fall, at least a post rut on our farm. But he looked like a 3-year-old, so you never know what they're going to do as they get a little bit older if they're going to shift. This particular property is unique in that to the south it's a bunch of tillable, and directly to the north is a bunch of tillable. So we do have a lot of the cover, but it's a river bottom piece, so everybody has cover along the river. So these deer run up and down the river in the rut. So I had very little confidence that he was going to make it. And as I had multiple people reach out to me on Facebook from a mile away up the river that had pictures of him. And so he was kind of all over the place. But at this particular time, it had been 3 days and he had been chasing does around. We have 200 acres or so of dense wetland cover, and we have way too many does, and so in the rut, this particular farm is interesting because we'll pull a lot of deer in there. And we hunt smart. We try not to overpressure it. There's just a couple of us that hunt in there, and we're careful about getting in and getting out and trying not to just constantly blow deer out of there. So over the few years I've hunted this particular piece, we've seen in the rut, it sucks in a lot of deer. You could definitely have just a random roaming big deer that comes in there. And so I think that was the main thing with him is lots of does, and he was bouncing from one to the next. And, it happened to be the doe that he was on was a home body on our piece.
I would say Cody and I talk, and, we've said it before on the podcast, and I'm sure the listeners are tired of hearing about it. But, if we see the buck, that has to be the time we kill him, because we just don't get the multiple encounters with that same buck over and over and over again. And,
Right.
I was just trying to see why you were still seeing him multiple times.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think, you strike while the iron's hot, I guess. Like I said, there was a potential chance that he went off and never came back. There were other deer on this farm that we see every hunt. They live on the farm, and this wasn't necessarily that deer, but I had daylight photos of him November 1st, the morning of November 2nd. I filmed him the night of November 2nd, and then that was a Saturday, and then my next hunt back, because I had to go to work a couple days, was that Tuesday. And lo and behold, he's still around chasing does around. So I think a little bit of it in this situation was luck. Had he not come near me and into bow range, we would have seen how the rest of the season played out. I wouldn't have been surprised if, we didn't have lots of encounters with him. I mean, if you follow our blog, on Midwest Whitetail, we do these daily blogs. And I spent a lot of my season out on this particular farm because the year before I had sold my main farm with my cabin because it was a little too far away and my kids were getting older and it was harder to get down there. And my wife and I wanted to buy land closer to the house. And so we did that. And this particular year, I mean, this was the main farm I was hunting, and there were a couple really nice deer that we filmed. I mean, last year I think we probably filmed them 12 to 15 times. And some of those deer, when you have really good habitat, we do a lot of work. I think we have about 12 acres of food plots on this farm. We try to minimize pressure. This particular farm, we can hold deer and grow them year to year. I mean, the deer I shot October 26th was a 5-year-old, 173-inch deer that we had 3 years of history with. So some of them it works out pretty well. This deer, though, who knows? A little bit of it was luck.
I think every hunt, a little bit of it is luck. But you got to be there.
That's
you know
right.
what I mean? And you guys,
that's right.
You guys are hunting your ass off in November and all year. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
and
yeah, for sure.
You're putting you're putting the work in and setting those high priority sets. You know what I mean? Where that. You got 3 years on the farm now. You probably have a pretty good idea of where your rut stands are, where your October stands are, and that just goes back to, being out there and learning what it takes. But you were talking about that stand being really high, and this is something we like to touch on quite a bit. Is people always have different opinions on how high they need to be. What is your ideal height? Go if you're just out there hunting by yourself, and then go if you have a camera guy.
Yeah, there's a little bit of thing. There's a little bit that plays into that. In general, I like to be high, and I like to be high, particularly since I've started filming, probably 10 years ago, just because I have so much stuff in the tree, and there's a lot more movement when the deer is coming in, and so, sometimes that 5 feet higher, just out of their line of sight, they won't catch movement as easily when you're trying to move the camera and get on them. So, before I started filming, 16, 18 feet, I wouldn't really get higher than that. I had, in Louisiana, I used a climber. I'd just latch it on, climb up, and I'd like to stay lower so I could see under the canopy because, in Louisiana, it's like big swamp woods. So a little bit of my decision-making with that is based on the environment I'm hunting. I won't go sky high in a tree if I'm not going to be able to see anything. But a big part of what I choose right now is based on movement and two people. So right now, if I have a camera guy, we have 2 stands, we got our bags, our camera gear, he's moving, I'm moving, all this sort of stuff. We do a lot better getting up. So if I'm in a tree that doesn't have cover, I go higher. And if I'm reasonable cover in a tree, if I can find one with some branches on it, limbs on it, maybe a split trunk, I kind of aim for that 20 to 25 foot range right now as a standard hunt. And that's if, the other thing that goes into that is if I got another guy with me to help me carry all the stuff in.
Yeah, for sure.
We're doing hanging hunts. There's a lot of weight that goes into that. If I'm hanging a set, though, I usually put a 20-foot set of sticks for a permanent set, and then I'll put another one. So I'll get that 25-foot range for my standard sets that I put on my food plot edges in good trees. My hanging hunt style will vary a little bit. Like, I hunt public land still. I do like some of the urban hunting, and sometimes I self-film those hunts. Well, I'm not necessarily going to carry in 6 to 8 sticks just to get way up in the tree. So sometimes I have those muddy quick sticks. I really like them. They're just like little 2-bracket sticks. They're short. And, I can throw my pack with my camera gear, my stand on my pack, and then I can carry in a rack of those sticks and my bow in the other hand. Well, 4 of them's a lot lighter than 6 to 8, and they stay bound together better. So, some of these hunts over the years, I vary from, there's a couple of them where I'm probably only 14, 15 feet up in the tree because I only got 3 of these little sticks to get up there. But my preferred height's that 20 to 25 foot range.
Yeah, we're the
hunts
same
hang-
way. We noticed last year we were probably right about 18, and we felt like we just needed to be like 4 foot higher, 4 or 5 foot higher. So I'm thinking we'll just take your sticks and then I'll just carry one of my minis and just get us that extra, that extra 3 foot, you know what I mean, just to get us up a little bit more. And it's 1.5 pounds for me, you know what I mean? So
Yeah, right.
not a lot,
Yeah.
but yeah, when you're packing in, you got the weight comes into factor, and then if we film our stuff too, and you got the tree arm and all that weight comes into play, and then you're running a Sony, so the glass isn't crazy heavy, but we're running Canon, and the glass is like
It's a brick.
yeah, it's one of the lenses is 8 pounds, you know what I mean? So that's like your
Right.
stand, you know what I mean? So
Yeah. Well,
So-
what's funny is we carry in actually the standard camera setup. I've got a Canon 4K, camcorder that comes in, and then we've got the Sony mirrorless DSLR, and often we have 2 of those. I mean, I'll have one, and the camera guy will have one, because I'll just shoot B-roll myself, and then he'll shoot B-roll, and then he's got the camera on the camera arm, and then we've got like 3 or 4 GoPros. And so the camera, often I've got a pile of cameras, and a lot of times I regret that. I'm like, do we really need to bring all this? But it's fun. We're all in there filming.
yeah. I mean, I
I
want you to keep bringing the content you guys are bringing. I don't know who's editing your stuff, but you guys are filming it. They're editing it really good, and Bill's just got like the perfect voice for
Yes, he does.
voiceover and stuff. It's just like premium, you know what I mean? And
yeah, it's very soothing.
yeah, it is super soothing voice. You know what I mean?
I told Cody, it's probably 4 months ago now when we were getting our videos put together. I'm like, dude, we just need to hire Bill Winky to come in here, do our voiceovers, just hire him for 2 hours, say, hey, here, Bill, read this. All right, thank you. See you later, man.
Yeah.
We don't have a voice like that.
No.
He just crushes it. But
Yeah, he might respond to your email if you put that in there. I'll pay you for voiceovers. Depending on what you're offering.
Yeah. We don't have a lot.
Yeah.
I could put you on an 80-inch buck. How about that?
Yeah.
He'd be like,
That's right.
I'm all right, man. But
Yeah.
all right.
Oddly
Well,
enough, that we used to have all the production in-house. We kind of ran that in-house. We have the interns. We had a couple full-time guys. Those guys that broke away and created the Hunting Public. And then we still had, some in-house guys. Jared Mills does production, and Josh Sparks and these guys. And then actually last year we bought or created the production company. So we have a production company called 41 North Media. And I'm part owner of that. Jared Mills is part owner of that, and a couple other guys. And we actually produce Midwest Whitetail and Chasing November, and some series for Cabela's and some series for Realtree. And so we're now fully in charge of all that production, and we've got a great group of guys that are really talented at doing that.
now, you said 41 North Media?
Yep, 41
All right,
North
yeah, I got
Media.
you a follow already. I'll follow your content and try to learn something.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah, we're still putting all our content on Midwest Whitetail, but we're doing other productions, and we'll put some of our Western content. Like I've got a big elk hunt coming up. We'll put some of our Western content on our 41 North stuff because we don't have really another place to put that. But
Nice. Yeah, well, we don't want to take up your whole night. We really appreciate you coming on. I know a lot of people watch this film, but I think it's just a story that really needs to get out there. It's just an awesome story of a giant whitetail, and like you said, the recovery makes a story. It's an epic, awesome whitetail. It got points everywhere, you know what I mean? But the story on the end makes it completely unique, you know what I mean? So that's why we wanted to have you on.
yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. It's it's a fun one. It's a fun story to talk about. I love talking about it. I talk about it every day, and I don't think I'll ever top it as far as the buck combined with the hunt and the recovery. It's a crazy one.
That right there is another legend episode coming at you, and I'm going to say this legend right here is the best ever filmed legend that we've covered.
Yeah.
If you guys have not watched this film, Midwest Whitetail, check it out. Dude swimming across the river dragging a 200-incher on a rope. Like, come on, it don't get better. Multiple blood trails, 6 hours in. Like, it's just super cool.
If you haven't watched Chasing November, period, you need to start.
Yeah, that is. I can't believe the Southern guys.
I'm putting that out there.
The Southern
that
guys-
it's out there.
Yeah, the Southern guys are slacking on that.
I know.
Man. That's just I mean, it's Midwestern whitetail.
For
so
sure.
Maybe they haven't.
We'll cut them a break.
Yeah, they're kind of weird. All right, guys, you know the deal. We say it every time. Do the right thing. Get out there. Leave a legacy. And Whitetail Legacy's out until we'll be coming in your ear holes next Wednesday.